First, a bow. That's how we began every English class that I taught in Japan. And it took a little getting used to understand the custom. But I got to where I kind of liked it because it was just a nice show of respect right up front, the bow from the teacher to the students. And it also helped me identify the potential troublemakers. Because even in Japan, there would always be a few kids who didn't bow. And that's how I knew I might be in for a challenge. And I saw that one day when I was assigned on a special lesson to go and teach English at a preschool outside of town where I worked. And so I was very excited to do this, though, because I knew I was there as kind of an ambassador of goodwill to teach the children that they had nothing to fear from someone, big and foreign and funny looking like me. No one covered, of course, whether or not I might have anything to fear from the children. So I went out there and knocked on the door. There's a little building outside town. And it slid open, and a little woman about 5 feet tall with a yellow kerchief on her head and a Mickey Mouse apron came to the door. And she said, Shelby-san, ohayou gozaimasu. Yokozo. The words are fading. Haite kudasai. Please come on in. And I went inside, and she said, the children are waiting for you in a room right over here. So I went in, and there was a room about the size of this stage. And the children were going wild. They were all pushing each other, rolling around on the floor, kicking each other. Some of them were eating their feet. And Mrs. Okubo, that was the teacher, she got them all lined up. And she had said, hi, minasan, it's time to bow. And I bowed to them, and they bowed to me, except this one little boy didn't bow. And his name, as it turned out, was Hisayuki. I know this because Mrs. Okubo kept saying his name. Hisayuki, Hisayuki, dame, Hisayuki, kochikite. I thought, he's that kid. He's the kid who doesn't want to do what the other kids are doing. I understand. I was that kid once. So I kind of looked at Hisayuki, and with my eyes, I sent him a message that was, hey kid, it's okay. It's okay if you're not interested in this. It's going to be fun, and by the end of our time together, I'm going to have you speaking English. And he just kind of looked at me like, I thought, okay, no problem. So part of the lesson was to go over numbers. So we start with that. So I got some chalk, and I started drawing numbers on the board. 1, 2, 3. And at that moment, the children started to chant. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's weird. Why do they already know that? So that we'll just move on to the letters. And erase. A, B, C, D. And then the children started to sing. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. What? Why do you already know this? And I turned to Mrs. Okubo. Why do the children already know the numbers and the letters? And she said, そうですね、Sesame Street ビデオを見てから。We've been watching Sesame Street. Oh, great. Thanks a lot, Big Bird. Okay, so we've got a lot of time, and we're going to start talking about fruit. Fruit. Okay, so I got a piece of colorful chalk, I got a piece of orange chalk, and I drew an orange on the board. I said, okay, everybody, this is orange. And all the children shouted, orange, except Hisayuki, who shouted, banana. And I thought, nope, not going to throw me, no. You want a banana? Sure, no problem. Erase that yellow chalk, draw a little pointy fruit. All right, everybody, this is banana. And all the children shouted, banana, except Hisayuki, who then shouted, orange. Okay, no, not throwing me, no. So I erased that, got a piece of red chalk. We're just going to go right on. Drew a red fruit on the board and said, all right, everybody, this is apple. And they all laughed. And I thought that was odd. So I said it again, apple. And they laughed again. Hisayuki the loudest. Apple. I was like, what's so apple? Apple. And I thought maybe they're not clear on this. So I drew a little tree. It's an apple tree. Apple tree. No. I drew an apple pie. Apple pie. Apple pie. And I just didn't understand this, so I turned to the teacher and said, why are they laughing when I say apple? And she said, you see, the English word apple sounds a lot like the Japanese word apple. And apo is a word that children use to mean poop. There I'd become the big, funny-looking teacher who says poop. And I don't know if the children were laughing because they knew I'd said the wrong word and made a mistake, or if they thought I was telling them that in America, poop was red and round, grew on trees, and was something we baked into pies. Nonetheless, I could never wrest control of the lesson from them at that point. I could put any fruit up there I wanted. Peaches, apple, pears, apple, grapes, apple. And so at a certain point, I just lost it. I just stared at them like, what do you want from me? And sensing this power vacuum, they got up from the floor. They came toward me. They surrounded me. They started grabbing tiny fistfuls of my pants and climbing up me like I was some sort of a tree. And I said to Mrs. Okabo, "Tasukete, help." And she said, "Hi, minasan. Kore kara pool ni itte kudasai," which means, all right, everyone, let's go on out to the pool. And the children dropped off and went, "Yay!" And they ran on out to this little swimming pool they had right outside the school. And I had actually been told this whole swimming pool thing could be part of the deal, so I had some swim trunks with me. I was eager, though, to not put them on and to just go on back to the junior high where I felt so much safer. But the teacher said, "Shelby-san, もう40分がありますね. Means you still have another 40 minutes with us, don't you, Mr. Shelby? Can you just watch them while I go make the snack?" she said. Okay, sure. So I went and put my swim trunks on, went out into the little pool, which was, like a foot deep since it was just for little kids. And I relaxed, and she said, "Just whatever you do, don't take your eyes off Hisayuki." I said, "Okay." She went off to make the snack, and sure enough, there was Hisayuki looking at me from across the pool going, and I thought, whatever, kid, you're not going to do anything to me now. I'm not trying to teach you anything. Fine, you win, nothing's going to happen. And then I made my first real strategic mistake, because despite the warning, I took my eyes off Hisayuki and started playing with the children who were closer to me and, less dangerous. And he walked around the pool, walked to the edge of the pool over here, and found a big stack of hard styrofoam float boards. About, this high, this wide, things kids used to lay on in the water. He picked up one of those. He felt the weight of it in his hands. He sensed possibilities. He came over to right behind where I was sitting in the pool, stood right behind me, raised that float board as high as his little arms would lift it, and with every ounce of strength he had, he whacked me in the back of the head. So I'm just sitting there, splashed, ow! And I turn around, and I look at him, and there he is. And I think, no, and I reach back to take the float board away. But by this point, the other children have seen, and they think this is the coolest idea ever. And they all run over to the big stack of float boards, and they pick up the float boards, and they all come back over to me, and they all start whacking me with float boards. And I'm like, ow! And I don't think they were trying to hurt me. I think they thought I was so big and funny looking that I must not feel pain. Because they all laughed like they were giving me a present. Hee! Whack! Now, after a minute, I got up and I got away from them, and I went and just sort of leaned against the building, and I thought, oh my God, this is terrible. And it was total chaos now. The children were whacking each other with float boards, and some of them were crying, and some of them were naked now, running around. And in the middle of it all, there was Hisayuki. He wasn't done. He had found the hose that kept the pool filled with water, and he picked it up. And he saw it was all spraying out, and he performed a series of experiments with his thumb. Psh, psh, psh. And he realized that now he had a weapon. So he started spraying everybody. The naked kids. And I thought, no, evil child, you must be stopped. So I went over and I stood right behind him, put my foot down on the hose, and the water went doot, 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 doot. And he couldn't figure out what was wrong. And because he was only 4 years old, I don't think it occurred to him to look behind himself for the source of the problem. Instead, he thought it must be some sort of internal blockage. So to find the trouble, he put the hose up to his eye. And I thought, Well, isn't this interesting? Here I am, a teacher, grown up here to show children the way, here to teach goodwill. I could just go over and just take the hose from him and say, Hisayuki, bad boy. But I figured he'd been called a bad boy before. And it didn't seem to work. Maybe he even liked being called a bad boy. Maybe this was a lesson he needed to learn the hard way. Or in this case, the wet way. So I lifted my foot off the hose. And Hisayuki, who was looking very hard for the water, found the water. He threw the hose down, and he looked around, and he saw me. And it's like he thought, you. And I just looked at him like, Mr. Orange and Banana. And in that moment, we both looked over and spotted Mrs. Okubo, who had just emerged carrying a tray of snacks. She looked at us. She put the tray down. She called Hisayuki over. She got down on her hands and knees, or got down on her knees and listened to him and asked him questions. And I thought, oh no, she's taking testimony. I'm going to be deported. And a moment later, they came over to me, and she kind of nudged him a little, and he looked up at me and said, Mr. Shelby. Mr. Shelby, I'm sorry. And I thought, oh, you poor sweet kid. It's okay. Daijoubu. Don't worry about it. And Mrs. Okubo sent him on to play. And I turned to her and said, I'm so sorry. Gomen nasai. Moshiwakenaimasen. Sumimasen. She just held up her hand and said, Daijoubu yo. Hontou ni zutto mae kara kare wa so ni natta shiru yo. Which means, don't worry about it. He's fine. And besides, I've been wanting to do something like that to that kid for a long time. And so she had all the kids get dressed again, line up and face me because it was time to go. Mrs. Okubo and I stood together, facing Hisayuki and the children. We looked at one another, and together, we bowed. Thank you.